This is yoga practice with Yogi Wade. Today we'll be working on our arms and finding our control within the upper body, developing a few exercises that have been kind of instrumental in my own practice of arm balancing that we're going to get to. We'll start with our sun salutations, standing tall, finding the top of the mat, lifting up to the side bodies, noticing the breath, the flow of energy flowing into our bodies and flowing through every muscle and tendon that we can become aware of, letting the mind fill the body in our experience as we lift up, grow tall, and fold forwards. Maybe pedaling out the feet, hands come down to the mat, and we'll step, hop, or float our way back. Finding our plank pose. Hands just beneath the shoulders, side body long, lowering down, chaturanga dandasana. Taking a moment to hover at the bottom of our chaturanga, and just noticing how far apart are the hands, about shoulder distance apart. How much control do you have in the fingertips? Where can you move your hands? Sometimes it's good to keep the biceps about 90 degrees from the floor. So find this position. We're just going to remember how our chaturanga feels. Flipping to our toes, finding our cobra, low cobra, keeping it really low, and then pushing up and rolling over the toes and back into our downward facing dog as we lift the tailbone behind us, paddle out the feet. Some deep breaths into the lower back. And on the fifth breath, weight goes into the hands. We step, hop, or float to the top of the mat. Inhale to look up. Exhale to bow. And rise up, growing tall. Hands come to our heart. Surya Namaskar B. Inhaling as we find our chair pose, Utkatasana. Squeezing those hands together over our head, sinking the hips below. Getting those hips as low as they'll go. Finding them about there, about 90 degrees, bend in the knees. And then we can bring our hands down to frame the foot, just in front of the feet. Weight comes in the hands, we step or hop or float. Finding the plank pose, lowering down for our chaturanga and holding at the bottom of the chaturanga. Just noticing how this feels, the distance, the form, the four-limbed staff pose, chaturanga dandasana. We're gonna pull our heart through up into a low cobra, starting really low, and then lifting up tall, tucking our toes behind us, and pushing back into our downward facing dog, pedaling out the feet. The left foot comes flat, the right foot raises up as high as you can, and you step that right foot forward between the hands. Finding our warrior one, hips square, shoulders pull towards those hips, feet pull together as the hands rise up, lifting through the side body. Breathing through the core, noticing that breath energy flow from our lungs all the way down to our feet and all the way up to the tips of our fingers. Feeling everything in between grow a little bit stronger with each breath of air. We're going to come down and frame that front foot, stepping the other foot back slowly. Finding our plank pose. Chaturanga dandasana. Taking that moment to hover, just to feel how this feels, to hold here with the weight behind the knuckles and the weight behind the fingertips. Then we'll find our low cobra, pulling the heart forwards and those shoulders really far onto the back. And then we'll find our downward facing dog. Finding that back muscle, hollowing out that space between the armpits as we reach, extending the arms as far as they'll go. The right foot comes flat, the left foot raises up. You step that left foot forwards, finding our warrior one. Back foot about 45 degrees in the warrior one. Hips come square, shoulders come square. Breathe all the way into the tips of your fingers above us. And breathe all the way down into the toes and feet. Each breath you're growing a little bit stronger. Maintain that awareness of the energy and the strength flowing through us. It is not our strength, but it is a strength that is there that we can harness anytime that we need that energy. Let's take our next chaturanga dandasana. We're going to hold just a little bit longer this time than before. Just noticing how this feels in the arms and the hands. Finding our grip. Really gripping the mat with all 10 fingers of all the knuckles. Finding our grip where we're really strong. And then letting the pelvis come down. Finding our low cobra. Low cobra. High cobra. Upward facing dog. Pulling that heart forwards and up as you look up. And then roll over the toes, finding our down dog. Rolling those shoulders onto the back. Weight comes into the hands. Then the knees, hop or float. Finding the top of the mat. Bowing, bending the knees, finding our chair pose. Utkatasana. Bouncing the hips. Shoulders really far onto the back, reaching towards that tailbone with those shoulders. Hands can be, we'll spread them apart this time. As you open up that back. And we'll rise up tall. Finding our place at the top of our mat. Hopefully we're almost warmed up here. Let's take a forward fold. Bringing the feet a little bit wider than our hips. Our 2 fingers and our thumb can hook the big toe on each side. And we can bow, pulling the heart towards the mat between the feet. Using those arms to pull the heart a little bit closer so we can lengthen the side body. Release the neck and the jaw as you release the head as close to between the feet as you can get it. And we'll release. Looking up, taking a monkey pose. We're gonna come back down a little bit deeper. This time sliding the palm up underneath the soles of the feet so that the back of our hand is flat underneath the feet. The toes should touch this crease of the wrist. And so when you do that, you can push the weight into the toes and it releases some of those computer carpal tunnel bones that sometimes get all tight up in there. If you can try to pull the hands out from under the feet, you feel the shoulders and the arms and the toes, and everything is loosening up those wrists. We have nice and limber wrists for what's coming. Let's place our hands down to the mat, bend the knees. Knees come to the outsides of the triceps. We're going to try our crow pose for a moment and see if you can take the crow pose and jump back. Find our plank. Holding plank, noticing our grip. The grip is very important. We can even come down onto our knees as we look at our hands, find the knuckles, find the fingertips, and place the weight on those points, right behind the knuckles of each hand. See if you can keep as much weight onto the fingers, because that's what's going to give you your breaks. Testing our crow pose, finding our balance. The trick with the crow is to find a teeter-totter where you have your knuckles are kind of that fulcrum of the lever. If you have as much weight in front of your knuckles as behind you, if you try to put too much weight back, you're going to fall back. If you try to put too much weight forwards, you're putting a lot in the fingertips to not fall forwards. You want to be somewhere in the middle. Try to straighten the arms and grow as tall as you can. And we'll come back into our crow pose. Crow is always nice to open up the shoulders a little bit. So I like some of these binds. You can bind the left hand around the left leg. And open up on the exhale. Inhaling back to center. Finding the other side. Letting this release that shoulder. And coming back to center. Let's find another crow pose. Lifting those toes up off the mat. Finding your grip really strong. When you do, you try to straighten those elbows so you're getting as much height as you can. And here is the exercise for arm balancing. What we want to do is from our vakrasana, crow pose, we're going to find a lolasana, where you bring the knees into the insides of the arms, and then you can bounce back. Now, if you're new to lolasana, a good starter position for it is the child pose. We start with that child pose, bringing our fingers out as far ahead of us as we can, lengthening the spine, releasing the neck, and then we'll keep that spine long as we walk our hands to each side of the calves, maybe tucking the toes behind us, keeping the knees tucked in to the chest, keeping the heels tucked into the glute. So you want to form this little cannonball. You want to be as tight of a package as you can curl yourself into, and then you place your hands down. It would be kind of just beneath the knees, just above the calves on each side. And you can find some of these little lolasana push-ups. And feel how that feels to just do a little mini chaturanga. And when you figure that out, you can move the hands a little bit closer to the feet. Put a little more weight into the fingertips. And eventually, you'll be able to lift those feet up. And when you get that, maybe you can hold it here for a moment. Maybe your hands are on blocks. That'll give you more space. You don't have to be as tight of a ball. See if we can bounce into our crow pose and bounce back into lolasana. Find our little push-up. Maybe extending our arms, lengthening. The other practice with lolasana is the jump through. So you place the weight. I'm going to come into it from crow this time. You cross the ankles as you tuck into this ball, and you shoot it through. Finding a dandasana. This is our seated practice. These little jump throughs. Breathing into the fold. We can find a boat pose, navasana, maybe ardha navasana, if you're a little taller up. We'll bring those heels in tight, hands underneath us, and see if you can pick it up. Cross the opposite ankle on top, and pull it through, finding our crow pose, sitting back. We're gonna try another jump through, placing the weight behind the knuckles and fingertips. Crow pose. Noticing our balance, noticing how that feels. Let's jump the knees in together, and then back out into crow. We're gonna try that again. Jump the knees into the chest, hold it here, come back out into our crow. This time we're gonna cross the opposite leg on top and jump through. So find the lolasana pose, cross the ankle, and jump it through the arms. This time we'll bring the right ankle in, maybe cradling it a little bit. Taking any form of a Janusarasana or a half lotus fold that works for your practice today. Deep breath as we bow into the fold. Inhaling back up the center. Cradling this foot. Let's bring both of our heels in. Lift up navasana, the boat pose. Flat back. Heels come in. We're gonna pick it up. Opposite ankle on top. And jump it through. Find your crow pose. And find your weight on our toes and our feet behind us. As we bow in the Balasana squat. We're gonna jump through one more time. Opposite ankle on top. Maybe starting with a few bounce backs, vakrasana, lolasana. Seeing how many times can you go back and forth. Really working on the core, lifting up from your back behind you. Try to tuck yourself into this tight little ball. And when you're ready, you can jump through. Opposite leg grows long. For me, it's the left leg that I'm gonna cradle in, finding a half lotus. So the heel comes just on top of the hip, keeping the toe pointed to protect this front of the leg. that's engaged. As we point the toe, fold forward and bow. Releasing all the stale air as we grow long. Coming back to center. Let's take another bow on this side. Back to center. Crossing our ankles. We're going to pick it up, lolasana, and jump it through, finding our crow pose. And stepping it back. That's kind of a fun practice. I remember for years of practice when crow pose was one of the few arm balances I could practice. When I finally figured out lolasana, I would always just jump back and forth in every practice, bouncing in and out. And that gave me some of this arm strength that has really helped to develop my arm balancing practice. And since then, I've been able to add like little side crows on each side. So vakrasana, lolasana, side crow. Vakrasana, lolasana, side crow. Vakrasana. Let's give the wrists a break after that little practice. Another good arm balancing practice. After you've been cradling that hip for a little while, once your hips are pretty open, maybe take a few pigeon poses, another standing practice. See if you can hook that leg over your shoulder and try to wear it like a backpack. So you try to really tuck this in, and then you take your other leg, cross it on top, and this is asta vakrasana. Give yourself a little chaturanga there, and then you can uncross the legs, finding our crow, and wind it around to the other side. Now, it really starts with this little hip cradle. The shoulder comes underneath the calf and behind the knee. So you kind of play telephone with your foot to the ear. You lift it up. You see how much you can get that shoulder behind you. You drape the leg over you like a backpack strap. Once you get that, place your arms chaturanga distance apart, finding your chaturanga, crossing the legs, squeezing those knees together as you push the weight forward onto the hands. Asta vakrasana. So maybe you can stay here, squeezing those knees together, trying to straighten those legs. Maybe you can unwind it. And maybe you wind it over to the opposite side, threading through, meeting me in crow pose, and back into armbalancing squat. Let's take a moment, releasing the wrists, taking what your body needs. There's also a little bit of a wrist stretch you can take, where you take the hand behind your back, your pinky side up, and you flatten the wrist against the ribs and feel that opening up this top side of that wrist. Breathe into that for a moment. Release. We'll try the other side. Left hand behind the back, pinky finger on top, opening up those wrist bones, those wrist muscles, anything on this side. And we'll release that. I have one more arm balance for us today. Let's start forming our chaturanga. Noticing how it feels to chaturanga. Taking a low cobra. Finding the back bend. Chin slides behind the ears. Let's lower the arms. Bring our arms to our sides. Locust pose. Balasana A. Lifting those heels behind us, lifting the heart. Shoulders on the back, reach for the heels behind us. Finding a little bit of a back bend. When your core and your back is awake, we'll take a cobra. And let's push ourselves back into a tabletop. Point our fingers to our knees, pedaling out the wrists. Finding that maybe a little cat-cow here with those wrists inverted. We really want to find that open heart and that curve in the back. We're going to come onto our knees. Our arms can grow to the sides. We kind of scoop everything up so that our elbows are just about where our navel is, maybe about an inch above it. And so we kind of scoop all our muscles in one place. The fingertips come down to the mat. You kind of arch the back like a cat as you bend the elbow. Then you bring your feet behind you and you add the back bend. This is the peacock pose. Taking a moment, finding your practice. If your feet are against the wall, you can walk them up. That works too. I like to find a scoop, bring all my upper body strength into this one place. You gotta find that part where your elbows, it's like on each side and maybe an inch above the navel. So that way I'm using the center of my core is my center of gravity. So I can use all those core muscles that I've used in the locust pose, so Balasana A. We've been developing this through a lot of our practices together. You kind of scoop those muscles, place the weight behind the thumbs and the fingertips. Take a little cat, and then a cow. Open the back. Hold as long as you can. And we'll release. Take that moment, binding the hands behind our back, take a bound child's pose. Opening the heart as we bow, rolling out those shoulders. Coming back up to center. Finding our seated posture. Taking this moment to notice how we're breathing, how we're feeling, how is this experience of life and how has it changed through the course of this practice. How much control do we have over our experience that we can form our bodies into these challenging balancing poses that somehow have this way of opening the mind and releasing the stress and tensions of our day. I feel more balanced, more at ease. There's a fire within me. I'm ready to take on all of the challenges of my day when I know that there's nothing that I can do that can push myself as far or challenge myself in the way that my yoga practice can. It's a wonderful feeling to have to carry through the rest of my work and my day and my life outside of my practice, having generated this energy throughout these arm balances that I do like to practice on a very regular basis. Thank you for joining us today. You can see some of my other videos on this channel and links below. The love and light in me honors the love and light in each of you. Namaste.